Vil is a failing student at a prestigious magic academy, but since he lacks any form of magic, he makes up for it by using a sword to strike down his enemies. One day in class, Professor Edward is giving a lesson on how people can produce fire with the aid of catalysts and some magic. But of all the students in class he could choose from, he decides to call on Vil to demonstrate the experiment, knowing he is unable to use magic. He does this because he is a high-level hater, but Vil has no choice but to obey his order, so he walks up to the front of the class and begins trying to make the spell work, but predictably, nothing happens, so the whole class wastes no time in mocking him for his repeated failures. Edward tells them all to calm down. That's just because he wants to personally roast Vil for being incapable of such a rudimentary spell. Vil excels at magical theory, but he has no magical talent whatsoever, so Edward despises him for thinking he can attend magic school without any magic. One student in his class casts the fire spell from his seat to ignite the catalyst in front of Will, and while Edward isn't concerned for Will's safety at all, it would still be bad for his record if his student burnt to death, so he asks Cheyenne to refrain from doing reckless things like that in the future. Cheyenne apologizes and says he was just trying to help a little since Vil obviously isn't going to be able to do the demonstration. But with that said, Edward concludes the experiment and begins a speech about how magic is supreme in this world, so people who have no talent for it have no right to exist in this magic academy. And all this is said while making direct eye contact with Will. After class, Vil feels exhausted from all the hate he was getting, but people love hating on him, so Cheyenne follows him out of class to continue messing with Will. Luckily, there are still some people who are on Vil's side as Colette comes running to his defense. Cheyenne asks why Colette is defending Vil when she's an honors student and Vil is half a point away from dropping out of school, but she says that doesn't matter since Vil is the nicest person she has ever met and he works much harder than any of them ever have. Cheyenne is stunned for a moment, but then he begins laughing since no matter how kind or hardworking Vil is, it won't change the fact that he can't use magic, and Vil is certainly never going to become Magia Vendor without magic. Cheyenne and his friends leave Vil alone for now after that, so while walking together, Colette tells Vil not to be bothered by what Cheyenne and Professor Edward were saying since they just did it to humiliate him, but Vil says it's fine since he really isn't able to use magic, and besides, he considers himself lucky since their hating made a cute girl like Colette want to hang out with him. Colette gets embarrassed when he says this, so she tells Vil that flattery isn't going to make her want to go out with him, but Vil says he was just stating a fact since he thinks Colette is really cute. This gets Colette even more embarrassed, and she nearly falls for Vil on the spot, so she pushes him away for a bit so she can think clearly and remain calm. She is technically a noble, so she can't let herself fall in love so easily. After regaining her composure, she looks over to Will, but he is busy looking at the sky since it is especially beautiful today. Long ago, the people of this world lived in a constant shroud of darkness, in fear of the celestial host who ruled over them. However, that all changed when the Shadow Wizard Money Gang joined forces to oppose the Celestial and bring the light of the sky to everyone. These wizards came to be known as the Magia Vendor, and they are regarded as the epitome of magic, so no mages alive to date have ever been able to live up to the title. Colette wonders if the Ice Maiden, Albus Vina, is watching over them right now, and Vil says he is sure she is, because he knows for a fact that she is looking at them right now from her window at the top of the world. Back when Vil was younger, he had a childhood friend called Elfaria, and she would tell him all about the sun and moon she read about in her books. She was especially excited to see the sunset since it is supposedly really pretty, so she hoped they could become Magia Vanders together someday and see the sun together. Vil promised to become a Magia Vander with her, but while it may have just been a promise between children, Elfaria actually worked hard to make it happen, and soon enough, she had climbed to the top of the tower through all her hard work. In contrast, Vil had no talent at all to keep his promise, yet he is still trying his best to make it up the tower, even if it is just a delusional dream. However, even with his rock-solid resolve, it doesn't stop him from crumbling like a cookie when he gets scolded. Vil asks Professor Werkner to calm down a bit, but Werkner is rightfully angry since Vil went into the dungeon again despite knowing how dangerous it was. And all the way down to the 7th floor, too. He is worried Vil will end up getting himself killed at this rate, so Vil begs him for forgiveness, but he also asks if he can get his extra credit now. Werkner is still mad at him for going into the dungeon alone, but Vil was able to return with proof that he killed an evil guard, so he is awarded with 2 points of extra credit. Vil celebrates with his pet while Werkner gets the paperwork ready, but as he does so, he asks Vil if he still hasn't given up on becoming a Magia Vander. In order to become one, Vil would first need to advance to a higher institute, and to do that, he would need a total of 7,200 credits. Normally, students would accumulate these credits in subjects like writing, praxis, and spell work, but since Vil can't use magic, he will never earn any credits from spell work. Vil is already aware of this, which is why he wanted to make up for it by doing extra work in praxis, but Worker has already explained to him that it is practically impossible to earn enough credits to pass through praxis alone. Vil realizes his chances are slim, but he still wants to hold on to hope that he can fulfill his promise of becoming a Mangiavander. In any case, Worker tells Vil that Mangiavander is a long way off and may not even graduate if he doesn't start earning more credits. Worker heard that Vil failed to earn any credits during his last exam, so unless he wants to flunk, he has to earn an additional 4 credits by the end of the week. Vil is shocked because that means he only has 2 days left before the deadline. So with no other options left, he begins searching his notes in hopes of finding a monster he can kill that is worth 4 credits. He's really desperate to find something, so while Workner doesn't want to encourage Vil to go into the dungeon, he tells him about a Baskerville monster on the 6th floor of the dungeon, and Vil hasn't submitted that one yet, so he could get the required credits from killing it. Vil runs up to Worker to hug him as thanks for all the help he has offered him, but Worker tells him not to cling so tightly because it could put his job on the line. Unfortunately, Cheyenne happened to be outside Worker's office during the whole conversation, so he knows that Vil is planning to go into the dungeon to slay a Baskerville, and as a true hater, he plans to head down there to kill it first, so Vil won't be able to get enough credits to remain in the school. A while later, Vil arrives on the 6th floor of the dungeon, and he is in a pretty good mood since he's fought at Baskerville before, so it should be an easy win for him. His pet doesn't think it's a good idea for Vil to go into this with so much confidence, but Vil says there's nothing for him to worry about since as long as he is careful about the Baskerville's flame breath, he won't get burnt to a crisp like last time. But in order to find the Baskerville, he is depending on Kiki to sniff it out. Meanwhile, Cheyenne and his friends are on their hating-ass mission to ensure that Vil drops out of the academy. His friends are equally hating on Vil, so they plan to kill the Baskerville first, and after that, they'll beat up Vil to send a message. They are all on board with the plan, but one of his friends asks if it is really safe for them to be this deep in the dungeon when it's only 3 of them here, but Cheyenne takes offense to the question, saying he is more than enough to keep all of them safe. The others let it go since they don't want to make Shan mad, so Cheyenne keeps walking while continuing to internally hate on Vil. In Cheyenne's opinion, someone who isn't able to use magic shouldn't even dare to speak of the Mangiavanders, so the very sight of Vil offends him. Once they've gotten deep into the dungeon, Cheyenne turns around to brief his friends on what they need to do. But a second later, one of his friends gets punched so hard that he slams into a wall, and there's no way that dude survived this. Cheyenne remains calm as he faces the monster, but the other guy starts freaking the hell out. Vil hears the shrieks of the guy, and he instantly realizes that someone must be in trouble, so he rushes over to help. He can't believe there are other people this deep in the dungeon, but from the sound he just heard, they can't be too far away. As Vil arrives at the sight of all the screaming, he hides behind a wall and spots someone desperately shooting fireballs at the monster while pissing their pants, but none of his attacks are having any effect. That monster is an evil sentinel, and from what Vil knows, is worth 10 points. Vil has never seen one in person before because the sentinel's habitat should be deeper down in the dungeon, so it makes no sense why it would come up to the 6th floor. More importantly, the person it is attacking is Cheyenne, and none of his spells are having any effect on the sentinel, so he doesn't stand a chance. The first thought that comes to Vil's mind is to go save Cheyenne, but then he takes a moment to think and comes to the conclusion, nah, f*** him. He's been hating on him since day one, so why should Vil feel any obligation to save him now since no one would know if he just left him to die? He's about to close his eyes and pretend he was never here, but then he has a flashback to a time with Elfaria when she told him that she liked how kind and brave Vil was, which is why she gave him a pair of goggles as a gift. Vil still had that same pair of goggles to this day, and if he wants to continue being the same person Elfaria has always liked, he has to put his personal grudges aside and save Cheyenne, even if he is a bitch. As the sentinel is about to kill Cheyenne, Vil jumps in and blocks the strike with his sword. At the same time, back in the academy, Professor Edward comes running into Worker's office to tell him that Cheyenne and his friends have all gone into the dungeon together without permission. He wants Worker to use his familiar to track them down before they get themselves killed, so Worker grabs his bird and asks what floor Cheyenne went to. Edward answers that they should be on the 6th floor, and as soon as Worker hears that, he is relieved since that means Vil is with them, and as long as he is there, he can handle any monster that attacks. He uses his crystal ball to show Edward what Vil is doing right now, and he is going toe-to-toe with the Sentinel, and he is absolutely blitzing it. In the blink of an eye, Vil has already chopped off one of the Sentinel's fingers, and when the Sentinel tries to counterattack, he blocks the strike mid-air and backs up to create some space. Vil then dashes in once more, and the Sentinel can't keep up with him at all. So before it even realizes what's going on, Vil has already gotten on top of it and stabbed into its shoulder. Cheyenne can't believe what he's seeing since he never thought Vil would be this so strong. Even Edward is left in shock, so Worker explains to him that Vil is an amazing anomaly. He possesses superhuman strength that a mage could never hope to achieve. He has a body that's more durable than a Nokia phone and unbelievably accurate observational skills that allow him to grasp an enemy's strategy and form countermeasures for it after being attacked once. So as the Sentinel tries to slash Vil again, he is able to perfectly predict the attack and dodge, while also slicing off the Sentinel's arm in the process. Vil may not be able to use magic, however. He is more than capable of making up for it with his sword. As the Sentinel writhes in pain, Vil proceeds to grab the Sentinel's sword with one hand and prepares to finish off once and for all. The Sentinel fires off a plasma blast as its last-ditch effort, but a single swing from Vil's sword is far more powerful, so Vil slices the Sentinel in half, claiming his victory. Once it's all over, Vil walks over to Cheyenne to ask if he is okay, and Cheyenne still has a grudge against Vil, but Vil just saved his life, so he bites his tongue. However, even after witnessing that whole fight and how capable Vil is, it doesn't stop Edward from hating one harder since he won't stand for Magicless being stronger than students with magic. Edwards leaves Worker's office in a rage, and while Worker is proud of Vil for saving Cheyenne, he is still mad at him for putting himself in danger. However, once again, he managed to defeat the monster, so Worker awards Vil with 10 points for killing the Sentinel. This was the end of episode 1. Subscribe to not miss the next part.